And like I'd said in the email, if you've already finished the homework, or you don't, at any time, if you need to leave, or you don't think that this is helpful for you, then feel free to use your time how it best suits you. Because I think most people probably aren't even having class today. So what do you think? Anybody want to either in the chat or shout out a question? Yeah, Lisa, go ahead.
Well, actually, for me, I had set aside 3.5 hours yesterday to finish up my homework.
Okay.
And someone came in, and after an hour, I can talk, 5, 10 minutes, 10 minutes maybe, but after an hour and 10 minutes, I finally had to just pack up, and then I couldn't find anybody else to do anything. So what I was just going to do is just go do my homework to finish through. And as I have a question, raise my hand. That would be okay with me.
Yeah.
If somebody else
That's
has a question, I will listen to theirs, but that's what I
Yep.
was just going to do.
Okay. Yep. That's fine. That is fine. Does anybody else have a question on the homework? Something you got hung up on? Something that doesn't seem quite right? Yeah, Lisa, go ahead.
Sorry, I have another question.
Yeah.
I no longer have a mouse, and since I'm not at the library, I can't make my screen big enough so that I can see it. Do you know how to
Okay.
on a laptop to make it bigger so that I can see what I'm doing without holding
Um,
it up to my eyes?
so I don't, well, without knowing what it is exactly. So are you talking about like the black, this course screen, or
No, the homework. I know
oh, the assignment?
when I'm at
Okay.
the school, then you can use the wheel on your
Yeah.
or
Yep.
you can
Yep.
use something else. There's a little thing at the bottom where you can make it bigger than 100%. But
There
on my
is, but there's
laptop,
also, yeah,
go
there's
ahead.
also, if you click control and then the plus sign.
Control plus. I knew there
Yeah.
was something. Control is something. Okay, let me
Hmm.
go to my screen because you know how hard it is to do homework if you're holding the computer with one hand
Oh
up to
yeah,
your eyes. Let me see.
I'm sure.
Control plus. Yes, now I can see it. Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Yep. You are very welcome. All right. Anybody else? So, oh, Ron, number 59. Okay. Let's see here. Can everybody else hear me? Okay, so Thelma, I don't know if maybe your volume is down or it's muted or something. Oh, I guess if you can't hear me, let me put it in the chat. Okay. So everybody else can hear me okay? Okay, excellent, excellent. And I'm actually gonna put this here. Okay, so this is, again, I probably have different different specifics than you do. So in my case, I've got, and I think did we finish going through this one yesterday, or did we not finish going through? Okay, Thelma, no problem. And you guys feel free to use your microphones. This is okay. So we did this one in class, but I guess so. Rohan, you have some further questions on this one. Is it the BELO plan part, or the first part, or just all of it?
So I tried working on this problem. I followed the
Okay.
steps that we did in the class.
Okay.
I looked at number 58 and followed like every step. but still I
Okay.
cannot get the right answer for some reason.
Okay. All right. So let's start out with, we'll do all three of these then. So we've got Carrie Ortiz, fluctuating work schedule. So again, we're going to be using one of those three methods to calculate. She has a fixed salary of $1,040 per week. Employment agreement provides for overtime at an extra half rate for hours. Sorry, you can hear my dog drinking in the background. Extra half rate for hours worked over 40. This week she worked 47 hours, so compute the following amounts. All right. So keep in mind, and they really don't make it perfectly clear in these questions, the below plan question, we're not going to use this information when we do the can everybody see that? Am I, for some reason, that's weird. Okay, you can see that, but you cannot see my cursor. I don't know why. So the calculations or the information that we're going to use in the first two questions is different from the information that we're going to use in the third part of this question. So when we get down to the third part, we're not going to pay attention to the 1,040 per week or the extra halftime rate or anything like that. We're just going to use the information that they have in part C there. So let's look at the first one. Actually, let me pull up. I'm going to pull up that page again to kind of help with the guide. Okay. All right, so recall, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for you guys. So recall, we're going to use this second method in the calculation of those first two questions. Okay, so which is we're going to divide by 40 hours. In the first method, we would divide by the total hours that were worked, but we're going to divide by 40. So calculator up here. Okay. I don't know why you can't see my cursor. That's really odd. What are they doing here? Okay. So her fixed salary is $1,040 per week. To figure out her hourly rate, again, we're going to take the weekly amount, divide it by the 40 hours. To there. So $26 an hour is what she's making. Next part of this, then for the overtime premium amount, we would multiply it by 0.5, which is 13. I can do that one in my head. Actually, I'm going to move this over here. That might make it a little bit easier to access it for me. And then we're going to multiply that by the number of hours of overtime. Get this back up. 13, and she had 47 hours, so she had 7 hours of overtime. So $91 for her overtime premium. And then we're going to add that to her regular weekly pay of $1,040. Whoops, we want just the overtime earnings first, don't we? Okay. See if we're right here. Nope, that's not right. All right, what did I do wrong? Again, I'm doing this wrong. Okay, yeah, divide by 2. Yeah, multiply by half rate for the hours over 40. Okay, so Y. We're following the directions. 1,040. Maybe they want us to do the 47 this time. Let's see if that's what they want. That would be 22. Yeah, go ahead. You can speak. Just go ahead and speak.
Oh, the problem is supposed to be for 40. You're supposed to put 1040 divided by 47, and then you can get the number two. That's the first
Okay.
process.
Okay, so they're using, okay, so maybe I'm not reading the full problem here because it doesn't, fluctuating work week. Let's see. Okay, I guess I just have to know which method they want you to use. You got to apparently look at the example. So yeah, so the 48 hours in the example that we were doing yesterday, they were asking for the second method, the 40 hours. So 2213, because I took the 1040 divided by 47 hours, and then let's see, and then rounded that 2213 times 0.5 for the overtime premium. And do they want you to round all of, yes, so 1107 times 7 hours, 7749. And I'll go through that again here for just a real quick. So this is where I'm messing up. I'm not looking at the example and yesterday's problems must have been using this method for the calculation of that overtime premium. Today's problem is using this method because we have to divide by the total hours worked. And I guess the only way that I know that or could know that is by the example that they have given here, because they're dividing it here by the 48 hours, the number of hours worked. Does that make sense to everybody? I see what I've done. I've not looked at the example first. I've just gone through and tried to calculate it. Does everybody see the mistake that I made?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we are going to use that. Where is it here? Sorry, looking for my form. There we go. All right, so in this particular problem, we're going to use the first example where we're going to divide the weekly rate by the total number of hours that were worked. In our example, it was 47 hours that were worked. So again, we'll take the 1040, which is our starting point for all of this, divided by 47 hours worked, gets us a rate of 2212 and change. Now they want us in the instructions to round everything to 2 decimal places, use these rounded amounts in subsequent computations. So we're going to round at each point. So that's why I use 2213. Then we're going to multiply it by the overtime premium rate, or the overtime, the 0.5 to get the overtime premium. Again, we're going to round it. So when we multiplied by 0.5, we got 1106.5, but we're going to round that to 1107. And then we're going to multiply that by the number of hours of overtime that were worked to get the overtime amount of 7749. So the total earnings then are going to be the 1040 per week plus the overtime. $1117.49. Okay, so the second part is pretty easy. All you're going to do once you've done that calculation of the overtime earnings, you just then add that to whatever the fixed salary is. Okay.
I'm sorry, I have another question.
Uh-huh.
Is it possible that my question could be different from everyone else's questions? Because I got a
Yes.
different amount
Yes.
per week and different number of hours. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Thanks.
They're all, in fact, they're probably all going to be different. So everybody's is going to have, so your fixed salary is going to be different. Maybe the number of hours worked are going to be different. Yep. That's all going to be different. But the calculation itself is going to be the same. Okay. So and I don't know if, so before I go on to the BELO one, are there any questions remaining on that one? Or do you want to see me like do it out by hand? Because I could do that too. Do it out, calculate it. Okay, you got that. Okay, cool. Now, the third part here, this is our BELO plan, our fun little BELO plan that we've got. Okay, so if it were a BELO plan, again, we're going to ignore all of the stuff at the initial information that was given in the problem. Now we're just going to pay attention to what's in Part C. So if it was a BELO plan with a pay rate of $23.45 per hour and a maximum of 47 hours, how much would Ortiz be paid for 42 hours? So remember, the 42 doesn't really matter because it's less than the maximum of 47. It's going to get paid. She's going to get paid for as though she worked the 47 hours anyway, right? So because there is no overtime, she didn't work any more than that. She would get an overtime premium if she worked more than, or an overtime amount if she worked more than the 47, but because she didn't, any hours that she worked with up to 47 are going to be, she's going to get paid the same amount. So we have to calculate what that was. So $23.45 per hour. Let's see here. Oops. I exited that. Okay. We're going to multiply that by the maximum hours of 47. So 23.45, 47. So 1102.15. Here, just a second. I need to write this stuff down so I don't forget it. So again, I've got the 23.45 times the maximum number of hours there. And then we're going to get the overtime premium, which is the 23.45 times 0.5. Okay, and we're going to round that. So that's our overtime premium rate, 1173. Okay, and then we are going to multiply that, the 1173, times the 7 hours of overtime, 82.11. Okay. And then we're going to take that 82.11 and add it to, remember we multiplied the 47 times 23.45, which was 1102.15 to get 1184.26. So 11 plus 82.11, 1184.26. Okay, so, and here are the steps in there. So we took the 23.45 times the maximum. Yeah, Ange, go ahead.
No, I don't have nothing to say.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Your hand was up, so that's why I wondered. So the hourly rate of $23.45 times the maximum number of hours to get the regular rate, and then we're going to take the hourly rate times 0.5 to get that overtime premium, multiply that by the maximum number of hours to get our overtime premium rate, which in our case was 82.11. No, was 1173. Sorry, 1173, and then oh, sorry, no, it wasn't 1173 was our premium rate. Multiplied that by the 7 hours maximum of overtime, and then we're going to add those two results together. So we've got the regular weekly amount plus the overtime premium, and that's what we did. And remember, our problem is different from this one because in our problem, the maximum hours was actually more than what was worked. So if it had been, and in this example, the number of hours worked was more than what the maximum hours were. So that's why there's these extra couple of steps in this problem at the bottom that there aren't in our problem. Do you need me to go through that again or further explanations, or do you want to see my calculations? Anybody? Bueller? Yes, absolutely. Let me. Yeah, you can. Hold on just a second here, though. Here we go. Sorry. When I change the cameras, the mic turns off for some reason. Okay, let me start over. So we've got our hourly rate, which they gave us. We've got our maximum hours, which they gave us as well. Multiply those two together to get our weekly rate. We're going to use this calculation in our final calculation, but we don't need it for the next step. But this is step one. Our hourly rate times our maximum hours. Then step two, we're going to take our hourly rate times 0.5 to get our overtime premium per hour, right? So, and again, this is rounded. This came to less than 73 cents, but we rounded it to 73. Then we're going to take that result and multiply it by the number of hours, the maximum hours over 40 hours. So this, again, this is our max hours minus 40. Okay, so in our case, that's why we use the 7. So 1173 times the 7 hours to get the 8211. Then in step 3, we're essentially going to just take step 1 plus step 2 equals our total, which in our case was 1184.26. So if you can think of it as 3 steps in this process, and again, this is for the BELO. Is that any other? Okay, excellent, excellent. Other questions? And I'm going to go back to the, I can bring that back up again if you need it. Other questions? Oops, I don't want that. Wrong camera. Go right ahead.
Can we take a look at number 48?
48, yes. Okay, so hourly, 2 different rates. Okay, so this is with 2 different rates and overtime, right? And the different methods. Remember, so one of them we're going to actually calculate, and I don't know which one they have here for each of these, but one of them we're just going to use, oh, here we go, use the higher rate, whatever that is. The other one we're going to apportion between the 2 rates, and then the third one we're going to actually calculate the overtime based on which job they worked in the overtime. So we've got Kyle Foreman, worked 47 hours during the week for Erickson Company, 2 different jobs. His pay rate was $14 for the first 40 hours. Pay rate was $11.80 for the other 7 hours. Okay, so in overtime, he worked at the $11.80 pay rate. Determine his gross pay for that week if the company uses the 1/2 average method. Okay, so they're actually naming it the 1/2 average method here, which we didn't really do that in the slides, but it's going to be this method 2, right? So what we're going to do, we can follow this to figure it out. So we've got, let me write this down here, 48. So 40 hours at 14 and 7 hours at 11.80. Okay. So we can figure out, we'll multiply each of those by the appropriate rate. Let me get my calculator up here again. All right, so we've got 40 times 14, 560. And then we've got 7 times 1180, 8260. Okay. So in order to calculate the overtime rate, so we've got to add those two together. So 260 for 642. So we're going to add plus 8260, 642.60 there. Okay, and that's where we get this. And then we're going to divide it by the total number of hours. So the 642.60 divided by 47 hours. Was that 47? Yes, 47. Divided by 47. So 1367. And then we're going to multiply that by 0.5. So 684. Hopefully, am I rounding at the points that they want us to? Round your overtime rate. Sorry. Nope. Uh-oh. I bet this is my kid's school. They're getting out. Okay. So we're going to, where was I here? So 684 is, oh, I was seeing if I'm rounding at the right place. Round your overtime rate and the interim computations to 2 decimal places, use the rounded amount. Okay. So 684 is our overtime, our hourly overtime premium rate. Oh, I know what this question was there. So then we're going to take that and multiply it by the number of hours in overtime, which in our case is 7 hours. So 684 times 7 hours, 47 times 7, 47.88. And then we are going to add all of those together. We're going to add the 62, in this case, the first job A amount, job B amount, and then the overtime that we have calculated. So in this case, 47.88 plus, well, it's the 642.60, 690.48. So again, I can show you the steps that I took to get there. Hold on just a second. Okay. Okay, so for number 48, again, we've got 47 hours total. So we're going to take the number of hours worked in the first job, multiply it by the rate. Number of hours worked in the second job, multiply it by the rate to get those amounts. Add those two together. Then we're going to take that result. Now we have to figure out what the overtime premium amount is. We're going to take that result, divide it by the total number of hours worked of 47 to get an hourly rate of 1367. And again, I rounded this one. We're going to take the 1367 times 1/2 to get that overtime premium rate. $6.84. This is our overtime premium per hour. Then we'll take the overtime premium per hour times 7 hours of overtime to get 47.88. And then lastly, we're going to take the 642.60 and then add the 47.88. And we got, what did we get here? Can't remember what the result was. 690.48. Yep. Sorry, my kids are being dismissed early. Not until 1:45 though. So we've got time. Does that help to, at least for the first part?
Yeah, first part is good.
Okay, so let's look at the second part of this. So in the second part, if there was an agreement that overtime would be paid at the rate for the job performed after the 40th hour, then what would the rate be? So this was A here, B here. So in that case, so we look back at the, I know I'm looking at the problem. You can't see it right now unless you have it up on your screen. He worked 47 hours, 2 different jobs, $14 an hour for the first 40 hours, pay rate $11.80 for the other 7 hours. Okay, so now what we're going to do is just take the 40 hours times 14, because none of that was in overtime. He got paid $560 for that, right? And then we had 7 hours at the 1180 rate. So we can take the 1180, that's here, times 1.5 to get what the overtime rate is for that. Let me see here. It's hard to do this with I've got a whole lot of space here. Times 1.5. So that rate is $17.70 per hour. So then we would take those 7 hours and multiply it by 1770 here times 7 hours, so 123.90. And then we would add those two together. So 560 plus 123.90 gets us 683.90. So
Could you raise your paper up just a little bit, please?
yeah, sorry. There we go. And so again, this was part, yeah, A and B. Questions? Does that answer your question, Ben?
Yeah, I'm just going through the
Okay.
follow-up question to make sure I got the method down.
Okay. Okay. Other questions? Other problems you want to go through? Number 44? You bet. Okay, let me change my camera here. Okay, number 44. 45. Ah, yes. Okay. So we've got to figure out how many hours were worked during the week. So let's see here. Which method are they using? Okay, so under the decimal system of computing time worked at Timmerman Company, production workers who are tardy are docked according to the schedule shown below. So if they're between 1 and 6 minutes late, they are docked 1/10 of an hour. 7 to 12 minutes, docked 2/10 of an hour, and so on. Regular hours of work are Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 11:30, so 4 hours, and then 12:30 to 4:30, another 4 hours. During 1 week, Harry Bjorn, who earns $12.15 an hour, reports in and checks out as shown below. Employees are not paid for ringing in a few minutes before 7:30 and 12:30, nor for ringing out a few minutes after 11:30 and 4:30. Okay, I'm gonna make this just a little bit smaller so we can, whoops, wrong way. Hopefully you can all still see that. All right, so here's his schedule. So on Monday, he was in at 7:30, well, 7:28, but that's just a couple minutes before, so he's not going to get paid for that. Out at 11:31. Again, he's not going to get paid for that extra minute. So essentially, that's 4 hours, right? So we can call that 4 hours. I'll write this down so I can show you. So Monday. So AM and PM. You're going to want to calculate these together. Or not together, but separately. So we've got 4 hours in the morning, 4.0 hours. And then in the afternoon, 12:29, again, that was 1 minute early. We're not going to count that. But, oh, I'm sorry, late. So he was early there and he was early there. So again, he was not late in clocking in. Okay. They are not paid, though, for a few minutes before or a few minutes after. So even though it was 1 minute after, he's not going to get paid for that minute. So this is, so he was in, even though he worked for 2 minutes for free, apparently. 12:29 to 4:31, that's another 4 hours. 8 hours. So 8 hours total for the first day. All right, so day 2, he was 5 minutes late. Okay. So on Tuesday, he was 5 minutes late getting in, but he clocked out on time. So we'd have to reference this chart up here. So now we're going to deduct 1/10 of an hour. Well, if he hadn't been late, it would have been 4 hours. But he was late. So we're going to deduct 1/10 of an hour from the 4 full hours. So we'll have 3.9 hours in the morning. In the afternoon, right on time, both times. So 4.0. So we add those two together and we get 7.9 hours. Does everybody understand how I did this, the morning? Yeah? If you don't say anything, I'm going to assume you get it.
So since he was like 5 minutes late, we
Mm-hmm.
deducted 1/10, correct?
1/10, exactly.
So if
Because
he was, let's say, if he was 20 minutes late clocking in,
if he was 20, which he is on Wednesday, right? Now we're going to use this chart up here. If he's between 19 and 24 minutes late, then we're going to deduct 4/10 of an hour in that case.
okay.
So we would take the full, so 11:33. So we would take that 4 hours minus 0.4. So on Wednesday morning, he's going to get paid for 3.6 hours. And on Wednesday afternoon, because he was just a few minutes early and a few minutes late clocking out, we're not going to do anything about that. He's just going to get paid the 4 hours. So 3.6 plus 4, So 7.6 for Wednesday. Here we go. And I'm writing this down, so I'll show you my calculations here too at the end. So Thursday, he was a few minutes early, clocking in, 1 minute late, clocking out. So there's no deduction there. So it's the 4 hours, the full 4 hours. On Thursday, though, he was again 20 minutes late, clocking in. Supposed to be there at 12:30. He was there at 12:50. So we would again deduct the 4/10 of an hour. And then he's clocking out at 4:33. So he doesn't get paid for those extra 3 minutes. So we're going to take the 4 hours and deduct 0.4 again, based on the chart here. So it's another 7.6 hours. And then we'll look at Friday. Okay, so Friday he came at 7:28, left at 11:32. So that's exactly 4 hours. And then in the afternoon, he came in at 12:40. Well, he's 10 minutes late. That's between 7 and 12. So we're going to deduct 2/10 of an hour from the full 4 hours. So that's 3.8. So 7.8 hours. Okay, let me show you real quick how we came to that. Oops. Okay. So I calculated the morning hours and then the afternoon hours. You can start with just the full 4 hours and then adjust from there. So because he was late in the morning, we're going to deduct time on that Tuesday. So 1/10. He was late again on Wednesday. He was late in the afternoon on Thursday, and he was late in the afternoon on Friday. So take each of those, add them up. We're just going to add all of those together. So what do we have? Well, you could take 40, 1, 5. Okay. Let's see. So 8 plus 7.9 plus 7.6 plus 7.6 plus 7.8, 38.9 hours total is what he had there. Okay, go back to screen. So we'll add that in. Total hours, 8.9. So his gross earnings for the week, we're going to take the 38.9 and multiply it by his hourly rate, which is $12.15 an hour. He doesn't get any overtime. He didn't work over 40 hours. And then we're going to round that. So 472.64. Questions? No questions? Okay, Other problems? Any other problems you want to go through? No? Nothing else?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can look at an example for the piecework and the commission, like one each, because we didn't go through that well in the class.
Okay. Are there, so do you have homework problems that have that I could use for, or
Yeah,
I could go through the slide as well. Do you want me to pull up the slide?
anything works.
Okay. Let me hold on just a second. I'll get to the slides. Okay. So piece rate. Remember, so I had mentioned that there are two different ways of calculate. And again, we're looking at overtime, right? It's easy if there's no overtime involved, right? Then it's just the whatever the piece rate is multiplied by the number of pieces that were produced. That is the salary. However, you do have to make sure that they earned at least. Sorry, let me just put this on do not disturb. You have to make sure that the shoot, now I lost my train of thought again. That they've made at least minimum wage, right? So, for example, if you've got somebody that, and I'll get the calculator up here. So let's say you've got somebody who is paid $10 per piece. They worked 40 hours. They're paid $10 per piece that they assemble, and they assembled two pieces, which isn't very much. So two pieces at $10 a piece, but they worked 40 hours. Well, they only made $20. So the employer is going to have to make up the difference between the $20 and the which would be $290 for minimum wage. They've got to make at least minimum wage on an hourly basis. Okay, so that would be the only exception when we're calculating and we don't have to deal with overtime. Now, when we have overtime, though, the complication with piece rate is, well, how do we calculate what the overtime rate is, right? How do we figure out what that is? And there are two ways to do it. The first way is to figure out how much they made over the course of the hours that they worked on a per hour basis. So, for example, if, again, I'm going to use $10. So $10 an hour, and they produced, let's say they produced 40 units in 40 hours. So we would take the $400 for the units that they produced, and we would divide it by the number of hours that they worked, 40, so they're making $10 an hour. Then we would multiply that times 1.5, and whoops, 10 times 1.5. All right. Oh, I'm clicking the wrong place. 10 times 1.5. $15 an hour is the overtime rate. So let's use a little more complicated calculation. So let's say they get $8 per unit and they produced 24 units in 40 hours. So now they're getting 109. Well, that's not a good example because we're not getting up to the minimum wage. Okay, so $8 per unit, and they produced 70 units, so $560 units in, and let's use the units, and they worked 40 hours. So they're making, whoops, I did multiplication instead of division. 560 divided by 40. So they're making $14 an hour. So there's a couple of steps to that calculation. We've got to figure out the total. Well, we have to know the units produced, and we have to know how much they make per unit to get their regular earnings. And then we have to divide that by the total number of hours that they work. Now, in my example, it was just 40 hours, but let's pretend that they worked overtime. So we've got, and I'm going to actually do this on paper. Hold on a second here. So let's say we've got somebody who makes, they make $8 per unit, and they produced, I don't know, 400 units. That's an awful lot, 40 units. And it took them 45 hours to produce those. So now, these are the three pieces of information that we have to know. Sorry, no, let's see if that'll focus. It's not your eyes, it's the, that's a little better. These are the three pieces of information that we have to know in order to calculate. And what we're trying to calculate is the overtime rate. So we're going to take the, let's see, times 40. We're going to take our full regular earnings. So 8 units times 40 is, what is that, 200 and, have I not got up to the full amount again? I might have to use a different number here. 8 times, no, 320, we're good. Okay, so their total earnings were 320. Then we're going to take that 320 and divide it by the number of hours worked. Transposing numbers, 45. Okay, so 320 divided by 45 hours is, actually that's 711. Okay, I don't want to do that because I'm under minimum wage and we're not complicating it with that right now. So let's say we made 45 units. I'm going to change that up. 45 units in 45 hours. All right. So 8 times 45, 360. And then 360 divided by 45 is, of course, going to be 8. So their average rate is $8 an hour. We're going to use that $8 an hour to calculate our overtime premium. So 8 times 0.5, $4 an hour is for our overtime premium amount there. And then we're going to take our regular pay of 360, and our full hour is already included in there. Our full hour of pay is included because we multiplied that by the 5 hours. So 360 plus $4 an hour times the number of hours of overtime, 4 times 5, and that's going to equal our total pay. So 360 for 20. All right, so $380 is what they would make. So those 5 hours of overtime, what we're trying to do is figure out, well, how much did they need to get paid for those 5 hours of overtime? We calculated it based on the full. We calculated out the overtime premium and then added that to the regular pay. So in this case, they're going to get $380. So they do get paid for that overtime. So that's the first way of calculating it, is kind of converting it to an hourly rate. The second way of calculating it, go back to, well, I guess I don't need to go back to the slide right this second. Second way of doing it is by using, we have to calculate how many units were produced in regular time and how many units were produced in overtime, and then we're going to, the overtime rate is going to be based on the number of units produced in overtime. So now we need a little bit more information. Okay, sorry, I know that's kind of out of, yeah, Rohan.
If we take a look at the homework problem number 63, we have a question.
Okay, number
And
63.
yeah, that also is pretty much everything.
Okay, so let's go ahead and look at number 63. Thanks for finding one. It's probably easier to do. Let's see. Okay, can you guys see my screen okay? I just got a notification that my connection was not very good. Alrighty. So here, and I'll go ahead and write this one down. You see the calculation afterwards. Okay, so during the first week in November, Aaron Mills worked 45.5 hours. So again, we need to know the number of hours worked. So write that down. Produced 1,255 units. We need to know that. Piece rate system, regular piece rate is 30 cents a unit. So we need to know that as well. Okay, so right now we don't have enough information to know it, to use the second method, right? Because we need to know, we need to be able to divide up how many units were produced in regular time and how many units were produced in overtime. So we don't have enough, just with this first sentence, we don't have enough information to figure that out. So we could use the first method, but right now we couldn't use the second method. They're going to give us the additional information though. Mills had agreed with her employer prior to the performance of the work that she would be paid 1.5 times the regular piece rate for all pieces produced during the overtime hours. Assume that her production totals for the week were 1,040 during regular hours, 215 during overtime. Okay, so now we know of the 1,255 hours, I'm sorry, 1,255 units, 1,040 were done in regular time and 255 were done in overtime, right? So now we do have enough information in order to figure this out. All right, so knowing that, what are the piece work earnings, what are the overtime earnings, and then what are the total earnings. So she gets 30 cents a unit in regular time. Yes. So 0.3, we're going to multiply it by the number of units produced in regular time, which is 312. So 0.3 times 1040, $312. And then we're going to multiply the piece rate times 1.5, 45 cents per unit, times 255 unit. No, not 255. I got that wrong. 215. So 45 cents times 215 units, 96.75. If we add those two together, plus 312, 408.75. All right, so we've got our piecework, it should say regular earnings, piecework. So, yeah, go ahead, Ange. Yeah, go ahead. Did you have a question? No? Okay. Yeah, Lisa.
Okay, I have a question, and I'll just talk until that person can talk on the microphone. So basically,
Okay.
oh, come on, Kat, I can't have you today. Sorry, he has been messing with me all day. Come here, Stash. Good boy. Okay. So basically what you're doing, because I have different numbers than you. You said the take how much it was per unit. So mine would be 30 cents, 37 cents per unit,
Okay.
times the number of units made in regular hours, which I have
Right.
1,014 in regular hours. So 37 times the 1014 is 375.18. So $375.18 for the regular time, right?
Right. Right.
And then for the units, I have 241 units were made in overtime. And
Right.
since it's 37 cents a unit, I'll take 37 times 1.5 to get time
Correct.
and a half, right?
Yep, exactly.
So 0.37 times 1.5 equals, so it's, okay, because I got that and I was like, really? Okay, so 55, well, it would be 56 cents per unit times the 241 units.
Right.
Times 241. So that part would be $134.96. And get
Okay.
the total pay, I take the 375.18 plus
Mm-hmm.
the 134.96, right?
Right.
To
Right.
make sure. Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I'm following
Yep.
along. Okay.
Yep. You're welcome. Yep, no problem. Yeah, so they're, although it's you know how they've got this worded, the piecework earnings, they're all piecework earnings. Piecework earnings in regular time, it should say. So the 312, 96.75, and 408.75. So let me show you my calculation here. Get my mouse out of the way. Actually, this works better. It does work better. All right. So here's my calculation. 45 and a half hours total, 1,255 units, 30 cents per unit. They gave us the information about how many units were produced in regular time, how many were produced in overtime. So for the regular time, we're just going to multiply the regular unit price times the number that were produced to get 312. And then we're going to multiply, I got this, by taking, so the overtime rate is 0.3 times 1.5. That's how I got that rate. 45 cents times the number of units that were produced in overtime. Multiply those two, 96.75, add the two together, and that's her total earnings. Now, I don't know, do they have us doing, so let me see that again. Weekly payroll register, but I have monthly paid employees. How do I calculate their amount earned? Okay, was this so Daniel, was this a specific problem that was, or is that the continuing payroll problem? Do we have the continuing payroll problem? We just have the assignments and the assessment. Number 71. Okay, let's take a specific look at that one. So Rohan, did that answer your question about this one?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so let's take a look at number 71. Here. All right, so okay, so this is the continuing payroll problem. Kipley Company, small manufacturing firm located in Pittsburgh. Okay, so here's wages are paid every Friday, with 1 week's pay being held back by the company, meaning they're waiting a week before they pay. First payday, January 14th. Record the hours and overtime. All right, so ending. So the payroll register is the first week. So I'm trying to see where your question is originating from. Because this is just for the week. The payroll register. Or are you trying to figure out, oh, cause like these guys here, Glenda, Thomas, and Barbara, if they're being paid per month, so how do you calculate it for each week? Is that your question? Okay, gotcha. All right, so remember, we've got to then annualize their salaries. We've got to do a couple of calculations to get there. So, for example, and I'm sorry, I know you can't see the problem right now. We've got one, we'll look at Glenda. So Glenda, she makes $2,700 a month, but she's paid weekly. So we've got to figure out what her weekly salary is. So we're going to annualize. Remember, first thing we're going to do is annualize her salary, figure out what it is on an annual basis. So we'll take 2,700, and this is per month, so we're going to multiply that by 12. So 2,700 times 12. So she makes $32,400 a year. Now we've got to figure out on a weekly basis how much she makes. So we're going to take that 32,000. Whoops, gosh, I'm transposing like crazy today. 32. That's one of the most common accounting errors, by the way, is transposing those numbers. Divided by 52 weeks in a year. So she makes 623.08 per week. Okay. So that's how we would figure out what she's making on a weekly basis. So 623.08. Let me get back to the screen. Okay, so there's Glenda again. She's employee number 32 there. All right, so regular earnings. Glenda, Roby, okay. So if she worked, let's see, how many hours did she work? Did they give us that? Oh, here's the, so that's how much they make per, here we go. Glenda worked 40 hours. Okay. So she doesn't get paid any overtime. The only time we would need to know how much she's making on an hourly basis is if she worked overtime, in which case we would then take the 623.08, divide it by 40 hours to get her rate on an hourly basis. She did not work 40 hours, although it looks like down here you've got one that did, Barbara. So you're going to have to figure out those extra 4 hours on an hourly basis, how much she made. But for Glenda, number 32, so 623.08 is what she made. So 623.08, whoops, 8, and she worked 40 hours. Well, maybe they do want us to figure out. Oh, hours were, oh, this is overtime, sorry. She did not work any overtime hours. 0. 0. I don't know if it nicks you for putting something in there or not, but 623.08. Oops, 08. I guess it does, probably does want a 0 here too. There we go. Okay. So again, Daniel, what you're going to do, get the camera out here. You've got to annualize it. So take that monthly amount, multiply it by 12 to get what they make per year, and then take that amount, divide it by the 52 weeks in a year. That gives you their weekly pay. Now, for that employee that worked some overtime, you're going to have to get an hourly rate as well, right? So hourly, we're going to take 623, whatever this result is. So again, we're going to use this result here, 623.08 divided by 40 hours in a week to get an hourly rate. So 623.08 divided by 40. So 15.58 per hour. So if Glenda had worked overtime, then we would need to know what this hourly rate is in order to pay her what she is due for overtime, because this is her regular rate. Overtime rate would be the 15.58 times 1.5. So 23.37. So that other employee, once you figured out that rate, then you're going to multiply that by the number of hours of overtime, which it looks like they worked 4 hours of overtime. Does that answer your question, Daniel? Okay, perfect. We've got 1 minute left. Any other questions in 1 minute? No? All right. Well, get to work. So we will on Tuesday we will start chapter 3. So this homework is due tonight by midnight or 11:59. Next Tuesday we're going to start chapter 3. We should have enough time. We've got 4 class periods before the midterm to cover chapter 3 and to do any review. So we should have enough, I think, to get all of that in. Your midterm exam is on, hard to believe we're talking about midterms, isn't it? Let's see, the 7th of March is when that is. So, like I said, we should have plenty of time. Chapter 3 covers Social Security and Medicare tax, calculating Social Security and Medicare tax. It also covers reporting of those taxes and payment of those taxes. So I would like you to read the chapter before we get together on Tuesday. Not that you're necessarily going to fully absorb all of the information, but I just want you to get a preview, just so you kind of start to get it in your mind how it all works, and then we can, once we get together in class, we can dig into it deeper, what the schedule is and all of that. There are a couple of the schedule for deposits is one of those areas that students oftentimes have some problems with, because it can get a little bit it can get a little bit complicated. So if you could read the chapter before we get together on Tuesday, that would help greatly then when I start to explain it. Okay. All right. Well, we'll let it go. Hey, hopefully you don't have to go out anywhere. My understanding is the roads are pretty slick. So be careful if you do, and have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay warm, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Okay. Bye. Thank you. You're welcome.